The WNBA just dropped a statistic that shows the most incredible individual impact we've ever seen in modern professional sports. One player, Caitlin Clark, is personally driving 26.5% of the entire league's economic engine. Not 5%, not even 10%. Over a quarter of everything the WNBA generates comes directly from this once-in-a-generation superstar. This isn't just impressive, it is completely unprecedented. One player has literally become the heartbeat of an entire professional league, bringing life to every corner of women's basketball in a way that completely changes how we think about sports economics. While everyone else is focused on manufactured drama and fake controversies, the real story has been sitting right there in the financial data. Clark hasn't just helped the WNBA, she has completely transformed it into something it has never been before. A league powered by pure star power on a scale that makes other sports' biggest names look ordinary. This goes way beyond individual games or season highlights. We're watching the birth of a completely new model in professional sports, where one athlete's incredible appeal creates such a powerful pull that it reshapes everything around her. These numbers don't just show success, they reveal something that challenges everything we thought we knew about how professional leagues work. The evidence is overwhelming. Once you see the full picture of Clark's impact, you'll understand why she represents not just the present of women's basketball, but its entire future. This isn't about record-breaking performances or highlight real moments. This is about how one player's exceptional talent has become the foundation that an entire sport now stands on. Here is what we're going to break down. First, the incredible numbers behind Clark's economic dominance figures that show an influence unlike anything we've seen in modern professional sports. Then we'll look at how her presence has fast-tracked the league's expansion plans, turning what seemed like distant goals into reality. Finally, we'll examine how her star power became the cornerstone of the WNBA's historic $2.2 billion media rights deal, a contract that represents the sport's jump into the big leagues of American entertainment. Let's dive into the numbers that prove Caitlin Clark isn't just a basketball player, she is a force of nature that has single-handedly revolutionized women's professional sports. The numbers behind Clark's impact read like something from a sports fairy tale, except every single digit is verified, documented, and undeniable. When she steps onto the court for Indiana Fever home games, attendance soars to around 17,000 fans. These aren't just statistics, they represent families driving hours to witness greatness. Young girls seeing their dreams come alive, and entire communities rallying around the shared experience of watching history unfold. But here is where the story becomes truly extraordinary. Clark's influence extends far beyond her own team's arena. When she plays, the entire WNBA ecosystem lights up. Television viewership spikes across all games, not just her own. Social media engagement explodes league. Merchandise sales surge for teams she has never even played for. She has created what economists call a rising tide effect, where her individual brilliance lifts every boat in the harbor. The ticket pricing data tells an even more compelling story. When Clark takes the court, demand drives prices to premium levels that reflect fans' recognition of witnessing something special. This isn't artificial inflation. It is the market's honest assessment of value. People understand they're not just buying a seat to a basketball game, they're purchasing access to a cultural moment. Meanwhile, the social media metrics paint the picture of a phenomenon that transcends sports. WNBA-related content interactions have surged 52% this season. But this isn't random growth, it is concentrated around the gravitational pull of Clark's extraordinary appeal. Her presence has transformed the league's digital footprint from a niche interest into mainstream entertainment, bringing millions of new eyes to women's basketball, who might never have discovered the sport otherwise. What makes these numbers even more remarkable is their consistency. This isn't some flash in the pan-celebrity moment or a temporary spike driven by novelty. Game after game, month after month, Clark continues to deliver the kind of magnetic performance that keeps audiences coming back and brings new fans into the fold. She has proven that her impact isn't just sustainable, it is accelerating. These ripple effects now reach into every corner of the business. Sponsorship deals that once seemed impossible for women's sports have become routine conversations. Television networks that previously treated the WNBA as an afterthought now compete for broadcast rights. International markets that had never shown interest in American women's basketball are suddenly paying attention. Clark has transformed the league from a domestic niche product into a global entertainment property. This transformation has created opportunities that extend far beyond professional basketball. Youth programs are seeing unprecedented enrollment spikes in markets where Clark plays. College recruitment has intensified as young players now see a clear, profitable path to professional success. Equipment sales, coaching certifications, and facility bookings have all surged in direct correlation with Clark's meteoric rise. The most stunning aspect of these numbers? What they reveal about untapped potential. If one player can generate this level of economic activity, imagine what becomes possible as the league continues building around her star power. Clark hasn't just raised the ceiling for women's basketball, she has proven there was no ceiling at all. Clark's extraordinary influence has transformed the WNBA's expansion strategy from cautious hope into confident reality. The league's plan to grow from 12 to 16 franchises by 2030 once seemed ambitious to the point of fantasy. Today, with Clark's proven ability to generate sustained audience engagement and revenue growth, that timeline looks not just achievable but potentially conservative. Each new franchise represents approximately $50 million in combined investment, covering startup costs, facilities, and market development. In the pre-Clark era, convincing investors to commit that level of capital to women's professional sports required extensive persuasion and careful risk management. Today, with Clark's 26.5% economic contribution serving as proof of concept, those conversations have fundamentally shifted. Investors now view women's basketball not as a charitable venture or long-term development project, but as a legitimate entertainment property with proven revenue, generating potential. Clark's impact has delivered the market validation that expansion demands. When potential franchise owners can point to concrete evidence of sustained fan engagement, television viewership, and merchandise sales, the business case becomes compelling rather than speculative. The geographic implications are equally significant. Markets that once seemed too risky for WNBA expansion now actively court franchises. Cities recognize that Clark's appeal extends far beyond traditional basketball demographics, drawing in families, young professionals, and casual sports fans who represent previously untapped revenue streams. Her crossover appeal has expanded the viable market for women's professional basketball exponentially. What is particularly encouraging is how Clark's influence has created a positive feedback loop for expansion. As new markets open and new franchises launch, they benefit immediately from the elevated profile she has brought to the entire league. New teams don't have to build audience interest from scratch, they inherit the momentum Clark has generated league-wide. The international dimension creates another layer of opportunity. Clark's global recognition has opened doors for potential expansion beyond North American markets. International investors who once viewed American women's basketball as a domestic curiosity now see it as exportable entertainment content with proven international appeal. Her star power has transformed the WNBA from a regional league into a global brand with expansion possibilities that stretch far beyond the original 16-team vision. Behind the scenes, expansion conversations have shifted from if to how quickly. League officials who once approached growth with careful incrementalism now find themselves managing the challenge of scaling up to meet the demand Clark's presence has generated. The problem is no longer convincing markets to accept WNBA franchises, it is choosing among multiple eager suitors. This acceleration creates its own opportunities. Faster expansion means more games, more television content, more merchandise opportunities, and more touchpoints for fan engagement. Each new franchise becomes another platform for showcasing the elevated level of play that Clark represents, giving the league additional chances to prove its entertainment value. The expansion timeline has also benefited from Clark's ability to attract high-quality ownership groups. Investors who might have approached women's sports with modest expectations now see the potential for significant returns. This elevated investor interest means new franchises launch with stronger financial backing, better facilities, and more ambitious marketing strategies. Perhaps most importantly, Clark's impact has proven that women's professional basketball can support rapid growth without sacrificing quality. Her presence has elevated the play of everyone around her, creating a rising standard that makes expansion feel like natural evolution, rather than risky overextension. The expansion story ultimately comes down to Clark's ability to transform perception into reality. What once required faith now has evidence. What once demanded patience now shows immediate results. She has turned the WNBA's expansion dreams into an inevitable progression driven by demonstrated market demand. And this brings us to perhaps the most significant validation of Clark's transformative impact: the historic $2.2 billion media rights agreement that begins in 2026. This deal represents more than just a financial milestone. It is a fundamental recognition that women's basketball, powered by Clark's extraordinary appeal, has earned its place among America's premier entertainment properties. The magnitude of this agreement becomes clear when you examine the historical context. Previous WNBA media deals were measured in millions, not billions. Networks often structured them as loss leaders or diversity initiatives rather than profit-driven entertainment investments. This new agreement represents a complete paradigm shift, with networks now competing for rights based on demonstrated audience engagement and revenue potential rather than social responsibility. Clark's 26.5% economic contribution gave media executives the concrete data they needed to justify this massive investment. When networks can point to actual viewership numbers, engagement metrics, and advertising revenue potential, they're making calculated business moves, not charity cases. Her impact alone transformed the WNBA from throwaway programming into must-watch television. The deal structure shows they're betting on sustained growth, not just a temporary spike. Multi-year agreements at this scale mean networks believe the audience won't just stick around, it'll keep expanding. Clark's proven track record of delivering ratings and engagement gave them that confidence, proving her appeal has real staying power beyond fleeting celebrity buzz. But here is what makes this media rights deal absolutely wild: the timing. Networks negotiated and locked in this billion-dollar commitment during Clark's rookie season. Think about that for a second. They made this historic investment based on just months of data, not years of proven performance. That is how undeniable her impact has been. The international component adds another layer to Clark's influence. Global broadcasting rights that used to be practically worthless are now serious money makers, all because international audiences want to watch Clark play. Networks worldwide realize she has turned American women's basketball into globally relevant content. And the streaming elements, they show just how much Clark appeals to younger viewers. Digital platforms that barely acknowledged women's sports before are now fighting for WNBA content, knowing Clark's fanbase represents exactly the engaged, passionate audience streaming services desperately want. Behind closed doors, these media rights negotiations revealed how completely Clark changed the industry's mindset. Network executives who used to approach women's sports with skepticism now discuss growth potential and market opportunities. The entire conversation shifted from "how do we make this work?" to "how do we capitalize on this goldmine?" The advertising transformation is equally game-changing. Premium brands that previously avoided women's sports are now actively pursuing WNBA partnerships, recognizing that Clark's audience represents serious consumer power with real purchasing ability. The league went from begging for sponsors to managing a bidding war among major brands wanting to ride Clark's wave. This media rights agreement creates the perfect growth cycle. Higher broadcast revenues fuel better player salaries, upgraded facilities, and stronger marketing goals, sustaining the elevated profile Clark established. The deal provides the financial foundation to not just maintain her transformative impact, but amplify it. Most importantly, this deal validates women's professional sports as legitimate entertainment properties worthy of major investment. Clark's influence proves that female athletes can drive the same audience engagement and commercial success as their male counterparts, opening doors for future generations of women's sports. The $2.2 billion figure represents more than money. It is recognition that Clark has fundamentally reshaped American sports entertainment. She has proven that excellence transcends gender, that star power knows no boundaries, and that audiences will embrace compelling content regardless of traditional market assumptions. This unprecedented level of individual influence ripples throughout the broader women's basketball ecosystem. Clark's 26.5% economic contribution isn't just a statistic, is proof of how one extraordinary athlete can transform an entire sport from niche interest into mainstream entertainment. The college basketball implications run particularly deep. Young players across the country now see a clear, lucrative pathway from amateur to professional success. Clark's journey from college standout to professional superstar creates a roadmap that makes women's basketball careers not just possible, but but genuinely attractive. High school players who might have previously focused on other sports or academics now see basketball as a viable path to both athletic achievement and financial success. Clark's example has transformed coaching at every level. Youth coaches report unprecedented interest in their programs, with parents eager to enroll daughters who dream of following Clark's path. College coaches find recruitment conversations fundamentally change. Top prospects now view women's basketball as a sport with genuine professional potential, rather than just scholarship opportunities. The international implications extend Clark's influence far beyond American borders. Overseas leagues that once attracted American players primarily through higher salaries now face competition from a WNBA that offers something equally valuable: global recognition and star-making potential. Clark's international profile makes staying in America an attractive option for elite players seeking worldwide recognition. Equipment manufacturers have responded to Clark's influence with increased investment in women's basketball products. Signature shoe deals, specialized training equipment, and youth-focused product lines all reflect industry recognition that Clark created a sustainable market for women's basketball merchandise. Her influence transformed women's basketball from an afterthought in sporting goods catalogs into a priority market segment. The media transformation tells its own story. Sports networks that once buried women's basketball in off-peak time slots now put WNBA content front and center. Journalists who treated women's sports like a side gig suddenly realized this is where the audience lives. Clark's star power lifted the entire sports media profile, creating a new standard for coverage and investment. The youth participation numbers reveal the real grassroots impact. Basketball camps, leagues, and training programs are seeing massive jumps in girls signing up, and guess who they're naming as their inspiration? This grassroots explosion is building a talent pipeline that'll keep the sport elevated for decades. The impact stretches way beyond athletics. Sports management programs are seeing students flood in because they finally see women's sports as a viable career path. Marketing students study Clark's brand like it is required reading. Business schools break down the WNBA's growth as the perfect case study of how one person's excellence can flip an entire industry. Corporate partnerships have completely shifted gears. Companies used to support women's sports basically for good PR. You know, checking the diversity box. Now, they recognize real marketing gold when they see Clark and this elevated WNBA brand. We're witnessing a fundamental shift from charity to actual commerce. Even the facilities are getting the upgrade treatment. Arenas that used to treat WNBA games like afterthoughts are now dropping serious money on improvements, specifically for women's basketball fans. New venues are being designed with the sport's elevated status in mind. But here is the biggest piece. Clark created what economists call a demonstration effect. She proved that women's professional sports can hit the same commercial heights as traditional male leagues. That proof of concept? It opens doors for every other women's sport and creates the blueprint for how individual greatness drives industry transformation. The international ripple effects are massive too. Basketball federations worldwide are reporting surging interest in their women's programs, with many pointing directly to Clark's success as their motivation for investing more in female player development. Her influence became a global catalyst for change. And don't sleep on the tech angle either. Sports analytics companies, streaming platforms, and social media networks, they're all studying Clark as the new model for athlete-driven content and fan engagement. Her digital game has become the case study for how modern athletes build and maintain worldwide audiences. What we're seeing here is a transformation that goes way beyond individual games or season stats. Clark's 26.5% economic contribution. That is just the tip of the iceberg. Visible proof of a much bigger shift touching every corner of women's basketball and sending shockwaves through the entire sports industry. The real question isn't whether Clark can keep this up, but how the ecosystem she has built will keep expanding. She has reset the bar for what women's pro sports can accomplish, creating expectations and opportunities that'll outlast any single player's career. Here is the thing though, this transformation reveals the untapped potential that was always sitting there in women's sports. Clark didn't magically create fan interest out of thin air. She uncovered interest that already existed, just waiting for the right spark. Her success proves the market for women's pro sports was never the problem. It was about finding that perfect storm of talent, personality, and timing to unlock what was already there. The business side is just as game-changing. Clark's proven that women's sports can play by the exact same rules as any other entertainment. Great content draws viewers, viewers bring in money, and money fuels more investment and growth. She has delivered the proof of concept that demolishes the fake barriers that held back women's pro sports for so long. Looking ahead, Clark's influence has built groundwork for growth that'll outlast her entire career. The infrastructure, fan base, and business relationships she has helped establish, all of that keeps benefiting women's basketball long after she hangs up her sneakers. She hasn't just built personal success, she has transformed the whole institution. What is really incredible is how natural and authentic this feels. Clark's impact wasn't cooked up in some marketing boardroom or pushed through artificial hype. It grew organically from her insane talent, magnetic personality, and genuine love for basketball. That authenticity makes her impact way more lasting than any celebrity. Driven attention that is all flash and no substance. Her influence also shows how excellence can break through traditional market barriers. Clark's appeal cuts across age groups, regions, and cultures because elite performance speaks to everyone. She has proven that skill and dedication can bulldoze through any artificial limits placed on women's pro athletics. The global recognition Clark's receiving might be the strongest proof of her transformative impact. When international audiences embrace an American women's basketball player with the same energy they typically reserve for male superstars, that signals a fundamental shift in how the world views women's professional sports. This global recognition creates opportunities that stretch far beyond basketball. Clark has essentially become a cultural ambassador for women's athletics, showing international audiences that American women's sports deliver world-class entertainment worthy of global attention. Her influence has opened doors for other American women's sports to build international audiences and revenue streams. Clark's success story inspires young athletes worldwide on a deeper level. Her journey from college standout to professional superstar gives them a roadmap that makes elite athletic careers feel achievable rather than impossible. This inspiration effect multiplies her impact exponentially. Each young player she inspires can inspire others in turn, creating ripple effects that extend far beyond what any single athlete could achieve alone. The technological innovations sparked by Clark's popularity have enhanced the fan experience in ways that benefit the entire sport. Better streaming quality, advanced statistical analysis, and innovative social media integration all emerged from efforts to serve the expanded audience her star power created. These improvements will outlast her career, continuing to benefit women's basketball for years to come. But here is what is really significant. Clark has proven that women's professional sports can achieve the same cultural relevance as any other form of entertainment. Her games have become must-see television, her performances spark cooler conversations, and her career developments make front-page news. This cultural penetration represents the ultimate validation of women's professional athletics as legitimate mainstream entertainment. The economic effects of Clark's influence ripple throughout entire metro areas where she plays. Hotels, restaurants, retail stores, and transportation services all see increased business from the economic activity her games generate. She has become not just a basketball player, but an economic catalyst whose influence reaches far beyond the arena. Clark's charitable and community impact adds another dimension to her transformative effect. Her platform allows her to support causes and organizations that benefit from her elevated profile, creating positive social impact that transcends sports. This community engagement shows how individual athletic excellence can become a force for broader social good. The media training and professional development opportunities created by Clark's success have benefited countless people throughout the women's sports ecosystem. Journalists, broadcasters, marketing professionals, and business executives have all developed new skills while responding to the opportunities her influence created. What becomes clear through this analysis is that Clark's 26.5% economic contribution represents far more than individual success. It is proof of concept for an entirely new model of women's professional sports. She has shown that female athletes can achieve the same level of commercial success, cultural impact, and global recognition as their male counterparts when given the right platform and opportunity. And this proof of concept extends well beyond basketball. Other women's sports now have a blueprint for how one superstar can transform an entire industry. Clark's success provides a roadmap for breaking through with audiences and generating substantial revenue. The investment world has taken notice. Venture capital firms and private equity groups are actively seeking opportunities in women's sports. Her success proved that women's athletics aren't charity cases. They're legitimate investments with serious growth potential. The research opportunities from Clark's phenomenon have generated new insights into sports economics, fan behavior, and athlete marketing that benefit the entire sports industry. Business schools, sports management programs, and marketing firms are studying her impact as the definitive case study of how one player can transform an entire landscape. Clark's success carries international implications as well. Basketball federations and sports organizations worldwide have witnessed her global recognition and started investing more heavily in women's basketball programs. This creates a rising tide effect that lifts female athletes across multiple continents. The tech sector keeps innovating because of the opportunities Clark's popularity created. Virtual reality experiences, enhanced mobile apps, and sophisticated analytics platforms all emerged from efforts to serve the massive audience her star power generated. These technological advances will keep improving the fan experience long after she retires. Perhaps the most important impact is how Clark affects young girls who see her success and realize their athletic dreams aren't just possible, they could actually be profitable. This inspiration creates a pipeline of future talent that'll keep women's basketball at this elevated level for generations. The corporate partnership evolution Clark drove has completely transformed how businesses view women's sports marketing. Companies that once approached women's athletics with minimal budgets now recognize the potential for serious returns, creating a more sustainable financial foundation for continued growth. The facility upgrades and infrastructure improvements inspired by Clark's popularity have enhanced the fan experience in ways that benefit all women's basketball players and fans. Better arenas, improved broadcast capabilities, enhanced training facilities, all investments that'll keep paying dividends long after her career ends. What we see from all this is transformation that goes way beyond any individual player or single season. Clark's 26.5% economic contribution sparked changes throughout the entire women's basketball ecosystem, creating a foundation for sustained growth that'll benefit the sport for decades. The most incredible thing about this whole transformation, it shows how pure excellence can bulldoze through all those artificial barriers that have held women's sports back for decades. Clark's success proves that when you've got real talent, dedication, and that authentic fire, you can shatter constraints that everyone thought were permanent fixtures in women's professional athletics. What she has created is what economists call a new equilibrium, basically. She has completely reset the baseline for what women's professional sports can actually achieve. We're talking audience numbers, commercial success, cultural impact, the whole 9 yards. And here is the thing. This isn't some flash in the pan moment. This represents a permanent shift in what people expect and what is actually possible. But here is what makes this really sustainable. Clark didn't just build personal success, she built institutional change. The infrastructure, the fan base, the commercial partnerships, the cultural recognition of that stays in place long after any individual player moves on. That is the real genius of what has happened here. This institutional transformation might actually be the most significant part of Clark's entire career. Sure, her individual excellence is incredible, but she has created a platform that will lift up generations of female athletes who come after her. She didn't just build a personal legacy, she built systemic change that will endure. And we're seeing this play out globally too. International audiences are embracing women's basketball like never before. Clark proved that exceptional athletic performance transcends cultural and geographic boundaries, opening up truly global opportunities for women's sports. The educational impact here is massive. Young athletes around the world can now see a clear pathway from amateur participation all the way to professional success. That kind of visibility creates motivation and ambition that drives participation at every level. Now, looking ahead, that 26.5% economic contribution Clark represents, that is not some unsustainable dependency, that is proof of concept. It shows us what becomes possible when exceptional talent finally gets the right opportunity. She has revealed enormous untapped potential in women's professional sports and given us the blueprint for how to unlock it. The most profound revelation from Clark's impact is this: the market for women's professional athletics was never broken. The real challenge was finding the right mix of talent, personality, and platform to unlock that market's massive potential. She cracked the code, and in doing so, changed the trajectory of women's sports forever. Her influence goes beyond individual achievement. It proves that women's professional athletics can reach the same commercial heights, cultural impact, and global recognition as any other entertainment industry. This proof opens doors for countless future athletes and creates opportunities that stretch far beyond basketball courts. The economic, cultural, and social shifts. We're witnessing from Clark's rise show how individual excellence can spark systemic change. She has demonstrated that one person's exceptional performance can lift an entire industry, inspire a generation, and drive lasting institutional transformation that benefits everyone. This is the real story behind the statistics, not just record-breaking numbers, but proof of concept for a new model of women's professional sports, one that recognizes no artificial ceilings and accepts no arbitrary limits. Clark has shown us what happens when raw talent meets the right opportunity, forever changing the game in the process. The WNBA doesn't just benefit from Caitlin Clark's presence. Her extraordinary influence has fundamentally transformed the league into something it never could have become without her. She embodies not just the present of women's basketball, but its unlimited future potential finally unleashed.